Good evening, everyone. It's really interesting to come in and feel the freshness of new form. I guess most of us don't really realize, but there's usually a big kind of a to-do that starts the beginning of a Dharma talk. There's a big entrance, there's lighting of the incense. And now the speaker just sits down and we start to talk. And that's form too. So that's really cool. And I appreciate all the efforts of everybody here as it continues. It's funny, I think I want to just begin by reminding us of a pretty famous quote by Dogen, which I ended up just scratching this down at the end of my talk, but as I was sitting, I thought that it actually could start my talk also. And it may be a quote that many of us have heard many times, and maybe it's something that some of you are going to hear for the first time. And it's just a famous quote by Dogen Zenji in his writing, one of his earliest writings, The Actualization of the Point. He says, "To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by the myriad things. When actualized, body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away. No trace remains." So, I actually don't know most of the people here, so I'll just give a little introduction. My name is TKU. I'm a teacher here at the Village Zendo, and in my life outside of Zen, I'm a musician. I'm a piano player and a professor at a school where I teach music. So, and my instrument is the piano. I'm mostly a pianist, and I play jazz piano mostly. But I'm bringing this up because the first thing I wanted to talk about was something that I've kind of become obsessed with these past 6 months or so. I just heard recently that someone asked Herbie Hancock, a great piano player, why he hasn't put out a record in more than 10 years. And he said because he's been busy watching YouTube videos. And so the beginning of what I wanted to talk about, what I've been obsessed with, are also YouTube videos. But they're particularly YouTube videos that I've been finding of some great classical pianists. So I've been really interested in watching visually classical pianists play. And it's interesting watching the different generations. I've watched Horowitz and I forgot his name now. The great he plays the Chopin the best. And Richter, and then in between, probably my favorite is Martha Argerich. And then there's a whole generation of younger pianists, and they're all different. When you watch the old pianist Rubinstein, that was his name, Horowitz and Rubinstein and Richter, it's interesting when you watch them. They have a very stoic look on their face, especially Rubinstein. He's just like this the whole time, and also Horowitz, a little bit more with Richter. But if you watch their bodies while they play, the older generation, you see the music. You see it coming out of their bodies, the way their bodies move. And in this younger generation, some of these younger piano players, Lang is one that maybe people have heard of. Katya, I can't remember her last name. It's very hard to pronounce her last name. And this other Russian piano player that I discovered named Daniil Trifonov. And as I went down the rabbit hole, I discovered some of these new piano players. And the thing that I really noticed about them that was really remarkable to me is that you can now see it in their face. And when you watch Trifonov, Trifonov is maybe the greatest example. He basically looks possessed when he plays. And you just see it in the face. And if the music is painful, he looks like he's in pain. And if the music is ecstasy, he's just like you see it. It's just like you see the music. If you're not even listening to it, you see it. You see them becoming possessed. And what is remarkable to me is that there's no separation. When I see this, I see that there's no separation between themselves and the melody. It's like they literally become the music. They are the music in that moment. So just like Dogen said, to study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by the myriad things. The myriad things in this situation is music and sound, right? So, and it's very interesting, it's been very interesting for me because coming up as a musician, especially when I was like a teenager, I found it very difficult to understand why the person that played the fastest wasn't the best. It was just like, I just couldn't understand. People would talk about, well, this guy plays with feeling. Okay, but it's much easier to do that than to play fast. It was always something that I heard people speak of, about playing with feeling as opposed to, but still it was just like, I was always mesmerized by I'm going like this, because this is back in the days when I wanted to be Jimi Hendrix or Eddie Van Halen. So I wanted to like kind of look at these two sides of the coin. So I think that when it comes to playing fast and like really trying to kind of just go to the edge of what's possible or what you can do, there's something in that which is concerned with impressing, it's kind of ego-driven, and it's also kind of outside. It's something in between the music and the playing of the music when it's approached this way, because there's a concern with how it's being perceived, or a concern with how oneself is being perceived. Whereas the playing with feeling is a selfless act, right? You're dropping everything, even yourself, and you're becoming the music. You're becoming the melody. Sounds really easy when you just kind of break it down into these two categories, but playing with feeling, I've discovered over the years, is, I think maybe most of us would attest to, is more difficult and more impressive for me. When I see someone that really drops away, like these classical pianists, and are able to really just become possessed, to let the self drop away and just be the music that they're playing. I find it very difficult to do, and it's something that I'm striving for when I play. But I think it's something that we can bring into our lives, and I wanted to look at a koan to maybe flesh this out a little bit more. So, in case anyone doesn't know, like I said, there's a lot of people here who don't know. So koans are these, usually like a little historical tidbit of something that happened a long time ago that has the key of something deeper within it, and it has a sense of a riddle sometimes, And it's designed in a way to make us go beyond where our minds can take us. So this is a case from the Blue Cliff record, and this is called Layman Pang's Good Snowflakes. So when Layman Pang took leave of Yao Shan, Shan ordered 10 Zen travelers to escort him to the gate. While they were walking, Layman Pang pointed to the snow in the air and said, "Good snowflakes. They don't fall in any other place." At that time, one of the Zen travelers named Chuan said, "Where do they fall?" The layman slapped him. Chuan said, "Even a layman shouldn't be so coarse." The layman said, "Though you call yourself a Zen traveler this way, the king of death still won't let you go." Chuan said, "How about you, layman?" Again, the layman slapped him and said, "Your eyes see like a blind man, your mouth speaks like a mute." Say Tu, who is the kind of the author of the book, the one who compiled the koans, he says at the end, "When Pang first spoke, I just would have made a snowball and hit him with it." So what does all this mean? So first of all, in koan study, we're instructed at first that we are to become the koan, to be the koan. So in this case, it would mean to take a look at this from all angles, right? Let ourselves be in the shoes of all the players in this koan. So if we do that, let's kind of explore what was Layman Pang's intention. So first, just a little historical background. Layman Pang was a layman, meaning that he was never ordained. And at that time, it was rare for a layman to be held in such high regard. Most of the teachers and people that we study were ordained. So he was a layman who was held in very high regard among the various monasteries throughout China. And wherever he went, he was welcomed with open arms and praised. So he spent some time in this temple, Yao Shan, and he was there for quite some time. And when he was going to leave, for whatever reason, he was going to go somewhere else, Shan himself, the abbot of the temple, ordered a group of these Zen travelers, Zen students, to escort him to the gate. And at that time, while that happened, it started to snow. So it wasn't snowing before then. So it was really kind of a spur of the moment thing. And so they're walking there, and he sees the snowflakes, and he points up and he says, "Ah, good snowflakes." They don't fall in any other place. Right? So he was really being there at that moment and just saying something, but was he just saying it? Or was it a little bait on a hook attached, maybe? Maybe it was a challenge. Maybe it was an invitation. Maybe it was all three of those things. But the invitation and the challenge, I believe, was to be there in that moment, fully in that moment with the snow. So when Chuan answered, where does it land? And maybe I put a little bit more inflection on that than he did. But I think that was him trying to challenge Layman Pang back, right? And so to me, that his answer was like the musician who's trying to play really fast, trying to make an impression, right? Concerned with how someone else is regarding him. Nope. We demand, and this is a little bit like I could say in like in the musical world that I live in. There's like a lot of people conflate these two all the time, but there's a jazz scene and there's a blues scene, and they don't really connect all that much. And for the blues players, the way the jazz players play is like way too heady. There was way too much theory involved. There's way too much study involved. It should be, to them, it should be 100% emotion and 100% feeling. So I feel that in a sense, maybe we could say in a sense that Pang is like the blues guy, and Tron is like the jazz musician who's just like kind of, I should speak because I'm a jazz musician. So I think Tron is kind of demanding in a sense with his slap. He's demanding for there to be no separation between one's actions and one's experience. And words are actions sometimes, right? So in this way, and this is kind of often happens, we can see what Pang did as an act of compassion, right? It was a different culture back then. And so, you know, I think if anyone ever today went into the Dokusan room and was having an interview and literally got slapped, would probably be taken quite differently. But I think that we could see on some level that what he was doing was compassionate. He was, you know, sometimes we need a push to realize these things. And the other thing I wondered was whether his words were condemnation or their declaration. When he says, your eyes, oh no, yeah. He says, your eyes see like a blind man, your mouth speaks like a mute. Is he putting him down there? In the verse, there's a point when he says, sorry, lost my place. I'm sorry, no, in the pointer. In the pointer, so the koans have a tiny little verse that happens before the koan that's supposed to kind of help you understand it. And in the pointer it says, if you describe and discuss, you see ghosts in front of your skull. If you seek in thought, you sit beneath the black mountain. The bright shining sun lights up the sky. The pure whispering wind circles the earth. So, what do we put in between ourself and our experience when something happens that makes us want to impress others, that makes us mentally leave our experience and sometimes doubt ourselves? For me, it's in my life, it's been kind of an instinct, to be honest. In many ways, I don't even think it's conscious. It's like there's an internal narration going on all the time. Trying to grasp, see, and know what's happening without fully experiencing it. This is why it all can always come back to our work on the cushion, right? When we're on the cushion, we are trying to be really awake and really upright, and at the same time, really relaxed and really calm. And those are the things that I think happen when we play with feeling. In the verse, so there's a pointer, there's a koan, and then there's a verse. The verse kind of sums everything up. And at a certain point in the verse, he said, gods and humans do not know for themselves. In eyes, in ears, absolutely clean. And one of the commentaries said, in the eyes is snow, in the ears is snow. So was it a condemnation when he said that your eyes see like a blind man and your mouth speaks like a mute? Or was he telling him the way things are? Do you see now why Seitu said, I would just hit him with a snowball? No separation. Someone in the commentary of this, someone said, for it to really work, the snowball would have to hit him before the words even got out of his mouth. As soon as he started to say something about snow, right? Oh, excuse me, I'm getting a cramp. Excuse me. So how do we bring this into our lives? You know, in those lines from the pointer, I find those lines helpful. If you describe and discuss, or if you seek in thought, you're going to be putting something in between. The bright shining sun lights up the sky. Do you feel it? Can you see it? The pure whispering wind circles the earth. Can you hear that? Can you hear the wind? Can you feel that? Right? And can we just let that happen when it happens? It's easy to do when the sun is shining on your face. Maybe a little bit more difficult, I don't know, if someone comes walking towards you with a MAGA hat on. Or if you see ICE agents somewhere arresting someone. How do we practice no separation in those moments? For me, it's been a scary thing to do for most of my life because, as I said, it was an instinct or unconscious just gesture to doubt myself and to not want to meet that moment when it felt uncomfortable and when it feels scary. And we all have our own mechanisms. We all have our own construct. For everyone, it's different. But we all find ways to avoid being here right now in this moment. And if you want to think about it as being hit with snowballs, I kind of feel like we're being hit with so many snowballs these days. There's a lot coming at us all the time. And it can become overwhelming. I think we can get numb from it sometimes. But I do think that this is what we really want. Oh yeah, This is what we want really deep down. We really want this experience of no separation. Because when there is no separation, you are really a part of it then, right? When we put that thing in between us and whatever we're experiencing, then we're not really a part of it. We're not really in it. And if there's even a little separation there, I think that, at least for me, it ends up feeling unfulfilling. There's something missing. And it's you. You're missing from really being there. Some other words of Dogen I found it helpful when he was speaking about one of the precepts. He says it's important not to advance, but also not retreat, right? Just stay in your center. Don't instinctively jump into something, but also don't retreat from it. Allow yourself to be there, to observe, to be a part of it, and to really be there. Last week, I had the great pleasure of getting to travel around the state of Utah. And I was driving around. We went through all the different canyons and national parks, and it's quite a remarkable place if you haven't been. And what's really incredible is that you can see in the geology, you can see hundreds of millions of years of history. And it's because a really kind of violent and traumatic event happened on the earth. I don't know, a couple 100 million years ago, and then through between that time and then, 50 million years after that, something else happened, and then another 20 million years after that, maybe something else happened. And you could see it. Really, really, probably some really nasty earthquakes. Lava from volcanoes covering the land and dropping some different rocks off. Sheer cliffs, you can see where land is just kind of fallen away, and you see these giant cliffs. And it just kind of made me think how beautiful it was. And the beauty was because of the trauma and the violence. It's like, it's the scars of the earth were so beautiful. Maybe we could take that with ourselves in some way too. Because I feel like, for me, my scars, a lot of the times, are what prevented me from allowing myself to meet those difficult moments. And if I can believe on some level that my scars and the trauma in my life that caused those scars is beautiful, maybe that can change something. To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by the myriad things. So, it can be anything, right? We're surrounded by the Dharma, and every moment of our lives is an invitation. Just as Layman Pang invited us to look at the snow. Every moment of our life is an invitation. Whether it's seeing police brutality, whether it's looking at a giant canyon, or whether it's hearing a piece of music. I'll end with a verse that the Master Yunmen wrote, which kind of points to this koan a little bit. So Yunmen said, "Even having not the slightest worry in the world is still a turning phrase. When you don't see a single form, this finally is half of the issue. If you want the whole issue, first you must know that there is a single road going beyond. When you get here, your great function must become manifest with no gap for even a needle to enter. And don't accept the judgment of other people." So where is that single road? Only you know how to get there.